Good evening. Good evening. This is the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And tonight we're going to get into some more nice guy stuff because it's like a plague that never goes away. You have simps becoming fathers and raising more simps. So it helps to keep you guys educated. But I'm taking a slightly different angle on this whole thing. So, and that angle is first really understanding the psychology behind this stuff. Because I think that's really important. It's important to understand the psychology behind what's happening with your own mind. And then it can give you a framework, right, to really understand what's going on. And we're not going to take a deep dive, but just going to help you understand the mind from the Freudian and the Jungian aspect from that angle and break that down for you. And then we can get into detail about how this stuff affects you guys because there's real world application to these psychological principles. And I don't want you guys to be lost. I know a lot of guys are confused. They're in pain. They're frustrated. They're even angry. And some don't even realize what they are. And that's the worst place to be. It's a terrible place to be in a position where you are a thing and you don't even know that you're that thing. And this is why, nice guys are born every day. Every single day, nice guys are born. So we're going to get into some of the mechanics behind all of this stuff in just a bit. I'd like for you to take a moment to go into the description of any recent video and find the link to my website, thedominance.academy.com, and check out what I've got going on there. There's coaching calls. Check out the membership for the monthly coaching. And in that, you get 4 hour-long calls with me per month. You get access to the Academy library, which is rife with videos, documents, and audios, all designed to help you. And it's stuff that is too advanced or too risque for the public. It's stuff that would probably get me canceled if I put it on YouTube. So I can't have that stuff out here like that. But my students get full access to that. And a lot of it has to do with, taking control of your internal world and then learning how to take more control of your outer world, and especially with regard to relationships. And there's a lot in there about training submissives, encouraging and inspiring submission from the women that are in your lives so that the two of you can be living full, creative, expressive, and authentic beings. And so you're showing up, as real as possible every day. And so that's really the goal of the Dominance Academy is to help you guys really tap into what you are and really unleash and, first get to understand and know, but then unleash your dominant masculine presence. And oftentimes it's not what you think it is. It's not loud bravado. It's not chest thumping. It's not loud voices. It's certainty. It's knowing. It's groundedness. It's like, who was it that said it? Teddy Roosevelt: walk softly and carry a big stick. And you basically embody that. You are the big stick, but there's no reason to shout about it. There's nothing to really prove to anyone, because you've already proven it to yourself. And that's the type of confidence that my students develop. They no longer need to explain themselves to anyone. They no longer need to, prove their existence to anyone, because it's already been proven. So there's nothing to defend. There's nothing to explain or excuse, nothing to deny. And this is really where you want to be. And, from this place, that's where you basically get to relax in your life. And it doesn't mean like, a life of leisure. It's being relaxed and having a life of leisure are two different things. You can have a life of leisure, but still be in full tension with lots of anxiety. Right? Just because you have the time and the money to go to beaches and, sip on alcoholic drinks by a pool doesn't necessarily mean you have peace and stillness within you. You're probably using those things as a cope to get away from your stresses. But as my Kung Fu teacher told me, wherever you go, there you are. So you can never outrun yourself. But my students, they stop running. They even stop walking. They stand still. And they learn to be with that self that they're trying to run away from. And once you spend time with that, you embrace it. And you realize there's really nothing to run away from. And that you're actually working against yourself by trying to run away from your fears, your anxieties, the things you don't like about yourself. That was always making things harder, trying to cover it up, with a fresh wardrobe, with a fancier lifestyle, a cooler way of talking, trying to be impressive. Like really, all of those efforts are trying to fool the self into believing that you are someone that you're actually not. And so once you become much more comfortable with who you are, and you stop pushing or pulling or trying to hide or take apart, that's when everything calms down. And the world gets a little bit quieter. My guys they don't really believe me when I tell them that I don't have a lot of thoughts in my head unless I put them there. It's just quiet. I don't walk around with tension in my body. I don't have tension in my chest. I don't have tension in my mind. It's just stillness. It's just relaxation. But not leisurely relaxation. It's just still. And so it's something that they never even thought possible. And they want to just figure it out to get to that point. And the thing is that, in the self-help sphere, in the manosphere, many areas of self-development, there's this idea that you can bring in new ideas, right? Affirmations, mantras, beliefs, and they really try to hammer in these new things, when really that's kind of like putting up new siding on a house, but directly over the old siding. And that's not the best way to go about it. Or if you've got, say, like a house, here in New York, there's many houses made of brownstone, and it's this soupy granulated stone, and they kind of plaster it up on the building, and it's sort of a reddish brown. And over time, it starts to crumble. And really what you're supposed to do is chip away the old stuff, just like a cavity, and then fill in with the new brownstone. But what a lot of people do is they paint over it, thinking that this is the fix. And really what happens is over time, water gets behind the paint. and then it freezes, and ice expands when it freezes, or water expands when it freezes, and it pushes the paint away from the stone and creates a gap so that more moisture can go in there. But it won't evaporate, it just gets stuck, and it just creates more and more problems. So really, we don't want to add siding. We don't want to add mindsets. We don't want to thinking that if we put something else on top, it's going to rid us of what's underneath. That's not the case. How it actually works is just letting go of certain things. You'll have faster development on your path of manhood. And really anyone, woman, man, but getting to your core essentially by a means of letting go of things, not necessarily adopting. Once you let go of things, you can then adopt. Okay, but you can't just add siding on top of siding. You have to get rid of the old siding first. Get it down to the wood, then add the new stuff. And that's how that works. How's it going, fellows? Atarius, this is a good question. We're going to be getting into this of, what is being a nice guy. And it's actually a light form of narcissism, because on the surface, it looks like he's doing for other people. He doesn't very often say no to people who ask him to do stuff. He's always the guy lending out his tools. He's always afraid to ask for them back. He just helps all the time. He has no boundaries. But people who look at him, they're like, oh man, Jonathan, he's such a great guy. He's always so helpful. He never asks for anything in return. He's just like always there, ready to give of himself. And it looks like he's doing for others, but really he's always doing this stuff for himself. It's a very narcissistic way of going about things. And so, because really his motivation is to win the favor of others. But they don't know that. That's the funny part. And so there's this concept of what's known as covert contracts, where he has this idea that if I do this, then they should do that for me or do something for me. But that deal is only in his head. The other person is not aware of this deal that he's made. And then so oftentimes he doesn't get what he needs from that other person because he doesn't make his needs or desires known, because he's not one for just standing on his square. He'll either get really depressed because his needs aren't being met, or he'll get angry and he'll get passive aggressive, he'll get spiteful, sometimes even violent. And those are the most dangerous nice guys, right? You see these guys like flipping out over women, like, don't you talk to my girl, blah, 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 like getting into fights over girls, pulling weapons because of girls. They're all afflicted with nice guy syndrome, but they're on the far extreme of that, which is like the dangerous simp. And the dangerous simp is there's someone to watch out for, because they can be unpredictable, and they're the ones who lose their fucking mind if you're talking to their girl. And the thing is that they don't understand that you can't really possess anyone. The only way that you can possibly possess someone is if they offer themselves to be possessed. That's it. That's the only way. You can do it by force, like I've mentioned in other shows, but this will not really bring about surrender. It'll only bring about obedience. And there's a difference. They're not offering it. You're just taking it and you're saying, you're going to be mine. And if you don't, something bad's going to happen. And so that makes someone very docile. It makes someone scared. And the person's not really concerned about that. They're not concerned about, true submission. And they may not even know about it. They're just and they're not even really concerned about the girl. It's all in this this vicious protection of their own emotional state. And it's because there's such a low sense of self-worth that they're acting this way. They reject themselves on such a deep level that if there's some sort of challenge to their validation system, it makes a, like it snaps a branch in their brain. So you really got to watch out. Really got to watch out for Sims. This is why I don't advocate for guys to mess with girls who are in a relationship with another guy. Like it may like come off kind of cool, like haha, like, she's married but she's in bed with me, like I'm the fucking Mac. But that really is not good, because you don't know how these guys would react once they find out, or if they find out, and it could mean your life. And because sometimes they have just no qualms. They're like, hey, if I can't have her, like, you're definitely not having her, and put you in the hospital or in the ground. And they're just willing to say like, no, forget my life, I don't care, I'll go to jail. So one must be very careful when interacting with guys like this because of their unpredictability. Now, these guys are not the most common. The most common reaction to this is they turn into big mopes, and they turn into the woe is me, and they just get filled with pain and sorrow. They get flooded with with just awful, sad feelings. That's the typical reaction. Okay. But still, like, don't pride yourself on betting married women. I learned that a long time ago, and it can really burn you if you're not careful. So we're talking about nice guy syndrome. And so I wanted to, first look at the basic architecture of the mind from the lenses of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. And if you don't know much about these psyche moguls, I suggest watching a couple of videos on YouTube. Just look up, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, and you'll get a basic idea of what they were about without really diving deep into their work. So Freud is known for identifying and kind of really exploring the three parts of the psyche, the id, the ego, and the superego. Okay. And we all hear about the ego, but it's often used in the wrong context. When someone says like, oh, they're full of ego, that's totally different than this psychological ego. They're saying they're full of themselves, they lack self-awareness, that sort of thing. But really, it's just part of a system, and that we need, actually. It's part of how our brains work. So the id is the primitive core. It's the pure instinct and impulse. This is where our hunger, our lust, our aggression, our pleasure, survival, all of that. And it wants what it wants, and it doesn't care about rules, right? Because it's just dealing things like from a primal level. It's not like ignoring rules. It's not even just aware of them. It doesn't even think in that way. Okay. Like a fish doesn't really think about air, right? Because it lives in water. The next one is the ego. Okay. Actually, no, I'll go to the superego. So the superego is like the internal parent. This is where your morals, your values, this is where guilt resides, your ideals, the voice that says you should or shouldn't do something, or you mustn't do something, or you must do something. Okay. So that's the superego. And then the ego is the mediator between those two, right? It faces reality and tries to balance the urges from the id with the world's limits, right? And the I you normally identify with. So it's like this balance between the id and the superego. And then it also represents our sense of self. So when we say I, that's the ego speaking. Okay. So that's the basic stuff around Freud. Now, Carl Jung, he got into like archetypes and like a softer way of looking at the human mind rather than, the more like architectural way that Freud was looking at it. Okay. And so he had more of like a symbolic way of looking at the mind, which I think was really cool. And he got into a lot of dream work, dream analysis and stuff. But anyway, so two of the big things that Jung pointed out was the anima and the animus. Okay, so the anima in a man is the unconscious feminine within him. It's like emotion, intuition, receptivity, feeling. And when disowned, it gets projected onto women. Okay. So that's the anima. The animus in a woman is the unconscious masculine within her. Okay. It's logic, assertiveness, will, direction. In men, it can be seen as his active inner masculine principle. So together, these form a tension between instinct, morality, balance, and inner polarity. And the trick isn't to kill any of them. It's to let each take its proper place at the table. So nice guy syndrome offers a vivid illustration of psychological imbalance, particularly when examining the interplay of Freudian and Jungian structures. It's a state where an individual's internal components, instead of collaborating, are in a constant struggle with each other, leading to a discordant self or sense of self and interactions with the world. So the Freudian id, representing our raw urges like aggression, sexuality, anger, is intensely suppressed in a nice guy. Early life experiences such as parental disapproval or social rejection for expressing these natural drives teaches him that such behaviors lead to loss of affection or acceptance. And this suppression isn't just a mild restraint, it's a forceful burying, an attempt to obliterate the animalistic part of himself. So we'll see this when guys will say like, oh, I will never be like him, right? And he tries to position himself as like the morally superior guy against, say, like the asshole, okay? So to ensure this suppression, the superego, the internalized moral compass and societal rules, becomes excessively dominant. It transforms into an inner tyrant, relentlessly dictating, be good, be kind, don't offend, don't want too much. And this voice just isn't a guide, it's a stern disciplinarian. And so the superego is the one that says like, I'm morally superior, right? I'm better than the asshole. And caught between these two extremes is the ego, the part of the mind that mediates reality. For the nice guy, the ego is in a perpetual state of attempting to broker peace between these two. It strives to keep the id quiet enough to avoid triggering internal alarm bells and maintain a facade of safety, while simultaneously appeasing the superego to feel a fleeting sense of worthiness. The critical casualty of this internal dynamic is authenticity. Instead of genuinely embodying virtue, the nice guy becomes an actor, performing goodness as a role rather than living as an integrated aspect of his being. So, for example, a man might constantly offer to help friends more, even when exhausted and overcommitted, because his superego dictates that a good friend always helps. His id, yearning for rest, is silenced. The ramification is burnout and resentment, when he then struggles to express, leading to passive-aggressive behavior or emotional outbursts as unrelated triggers. Another example is a man who avoids expressing sexual desire in a relationship for fear of being seen as creepy or only wanting one thing. His suppressed id leads to a lack of intimacy and connection, and his partner may feel confused or rejected, ultimately eroding the relationship. Jungian psychology adds another layer to this understanding. The nice guy's anima, right, his inner feminine principle, encompassing qualities like receptivity, emotional depth, intuition, becomes inflated and detached from his conscious self. He projects this idealized feminine onto women in his life, viewing them as the exclusive source of his completeness. Each woman, consequently, becomes a potential goddess who will finally recognize his inherent goodness and make him whole. Concurrently, his animus, the assertive, decisive, and logical masculine principle, remains underdeveloped. This internal imbalance explains why a nice guy might outwardly adore women, showering them with compliments and attention, yet harbor secret resentment. He resents them because he carries the very power and agency he has forfeited by suppressing his own animus. So let me say that again. He resents them because they carry the power and agency he has forfeited by suppressing his own animus. And that's the assertive, decisive, logical, masculine principle. So consider a man who consistently dates women he idealizes as perfect and nurturing. He puts them on a pedestal, believing they will complete him. When these women inevitably display human flaws or assert their own needs, his idealized image shatters, leading to disappointment, anger, and a sense of betrayal. He might then label them as crazy or ungrateful, rather than acknowledging his own unrealistic projections. This cycle repeats, leaving him feeling perpetually misunderstood and alone, never forming genuine, balanced connections. His underdeveloped animus, the masculine, means he struggles to make decisions, assert boundaries, or take initiative in his own life, often deferring to others or remaining stuck in unsatisfying situations. So if anybody has any questions about that, feel free. Feel free to pose them now. I hope that's coming into view for you, Atarius. So it happens over such as a woman cheat and then the dude killed, threw her body in a lake, but now in jail for life. Yeah, it had like this, like crazy shit like that. Like over, you ever see a dude doing crazy shit over a woman? It's absolutely nice guy syndrome. Hey there, kitten. Good to see you. Simplified, Mr. Justin, thank you for the lessons. Yeah, what's up, Cody? Good to see you, man. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of us, right? We can't avoid it. Like, it's just, this stuff gets baked into the culture of manhood. And I don't know if it's a psyop. I don't know if it's just natural development or a mixture of both, but it's fucked up a ton of guys, a lot of guys. And most of us haven't gone to the point of being broken, like actually snapped. Okay. We're just misaligned. And so just the amount of misalignment, that's when it becomes challenging to kind of like wrench things back on track. All right. And, sometimes heat has to be applied to make something straight again. So let's get back into this. So healing from the nice guy syndrome requires a rebalancing of these internal forces. The suppressed id, right? The survival stuff, the primal stuff must be acknowledged and reintegrated. This doesn't mean becoming reckless and aggressive, but rather learning to appropriately express anger, set boundaries, and pursue desires. And, here, we're in a kink space. So that means also recognizing your own desires, like even if they're a little weird, okay, or would be frowned upon by society. I know this is something that I had to contend with at some point, right? Like I know doms who are really into very aggressive kink, okay? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong off the bat, right? As long as it's calibrated, okay? I know guys who are to really strange stuff, and they would take this stuff and say, gosh, I'm really into like CNC, or I'm really into blood, or I'm really into this or that. And because of their upbringing, they will carry that judgment with them and saying, this is wrong. Like, like I ought not, right? And that's the super ego coming in as this like moral parent saying like, oh, you ought not to do that, and shaking their finger at you. And then that it comes in with feelings of guilt. Okay. And so to kind of break up that loop, you have to then just accept it. Stop rejecting the aspects of yourself that you've learned, or you think that society is going to say, oh, this is bad. And you kind of have to like, hide it from yourself. Even though if you were to accept it within yourself, no one would be able to tell. You know what I'm saying? But it's almost like if you were accepted in yourself, then somehow people would tell. They could see it on you, And that's not the way it works. But it feels that way, like you're exposed. But really all you're doing is exposing and accepting yourself to yourself. And that kind of takes the edge off the superego from trying to like over monitor what's going on, right? So you can't feel guilty for something that you've accepted as not being bad. All right. And so it's something that a lot of kinksters have to contend with. There's girls that I know who are, developing their submissive identity. And I mean, look at the world we live in and how, women are being taught and encouraged to be. Like, that's like almost like the super ego out into the world saying, ought not, right? You ought not be submissive. You ought not answer to a man. You ought stand on your own. You ought to be independent. You ought not need anyone, especially a man, right? And so there's all that finger wagging. And so girls who are going through the process of letting go, right? Because that's a lot of development happens through that. They have the same sort of feeling. They go through the same shit. Like, to get to our cores, the feelings are fairly similar between men and women, right? It's just the steps look a little bit different, but the feeling of going through those steps feels the same. And it's not any easier for either to step in or to step up or to step in, right? Women, they have to learn to step in and be okay with that. And they will get, like, I know women who are just flamed online for saying like, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. And so it's even more important as people who are, I guess, into alternative lifestyles and with that's relative to self-development. It can get difficult because we have other things inside us, and that we've learned that aren't kosher with society. Despite the popularity of certain things, like despite 50 Shades of Grey being one of the greatest selling books in the world, it's still seen as this like taboo thing. Okay. It's still seen as taboo and regarded that way. It's still a no-no. And so, but it doesn't matter what they do, right? It doesn't matter what society does. It's important how you relate with yourself. Okay. And trying to let go of guilt, let go of shame, and come into acceptance of what you are. And then, once you're there without judgment, without criticism, just looking at it, saying, okay, well, this is me, right? Like, there's no denying it anymore. Then if there's anything that you'd like to change, then you can. And you say, listen, this is not in line with my principles. This is something that, my higher self would like to see different. And that's when you look to change your habits or a belief or a behavior or something like that. But you want to do it based on something that's inside you, calling for this, rather than, guilt of like, oh, this person or this group might see me in a certain way. That doesn't matter really. So let me continue here. So the suppressed id must be acknowledged and reintegrated, and this doesn't mean becoming reckless or aggressive. Right? We're talking about the nice guy syndrome healing, but rather learning to appropriately express anger, set boundaries, and pursue desires. The tyrannical superego needs to quiet its constant criticism, allowing for self-compassion and genuine self-expression. The ego, instead of being a stressed mediator, must assume a leadership role, becoming a king who can listen to and understand his primal drives without allowing them to dictate his entire life. He learns to manage his impulses rather than deny them. Jung would emphasize the importance of the man courting his anima, bringing her internal qualities home rather than constantly chasing her reflection in external relationships. This involves developing his own emotional intelligence, intuition, and capacity for connection rather than relying on women to provide these for him. And this is what I mean when I talk to my students about filling your own cup. Okay? Because a lot of guys with nice guy syndrome, they come from a place of lack. There's a certain amount of volume missing from their cup. Some guys it's a lot, some guys it's just a little bit, and somewhere in between. But regardless, that loss of volume has to do with what's missing from them to themselves. It's the only reason why they're going to search out for women to make them feel better. And they could just pass it off and say, oh, well, I just really like sex. Well, sex is only just purely sex from a healed position. If you're not in a completely healed position, then sex is everything else but sex. It has all kinds of other types of meaning, emotionally and subconsciously. So he's lying to himself, but he doesn't know he's lying to himself. He's an addict that doesn't realize he's an addict. And it's until a calamity happens or, you just wake up somehow, for some reason, you won't ever really come to that understanding and realizing, holy fuck, like I'm at a deficit here. I've been living in an emotional deficit from myself for 30 years, right? Or 40 years or 25 years or however old you are, and it can be devastating coming to that realization. It can be painful. It can be, guilt inspiring. It could be, you could be feeling ashamed, right? And those are natural responses, but the trick is you don't want to stay there, right? Because again, that's your mind playing tricks on you so you don't have to move. It's a trick so that you can stay. You can stay right where you always have been. And so you have to kind of push past that sadness or that shame or whatever comes up and encourage yourself to look at these things objectively, just as they are. No judgment, no criticism, no pushing, no pulling. And this is when you can start integrating these things, right? Forgive yourself for judging these parts of you, okay? And then learn self-respect. Learn to have boundaries. Learn to love yourself and appreciate yourself, all right? Which eventually can turn into exalting yourself. But it can only be real exalting when you're healed or when you're healing, okay? It can't be some kind of cope to cover up that gap, to cover up that loss of volume. So let me read that part again. Jung would emphasize the importance of the man courting his anima, right? His internal feminine characteristics, right? The intuition, the emotional integrity or emotional intelligence rather. And that doesn't have anything to do with women at all. It's just like the softer side of things, right? The yang side of things. Bringing her internal qualities home rather than constantly chasing her reflection in external relationships. This involves developing his own emotional intelligence, intuition, and capacity for connection to himself, by the way, rather than relying on women to provide these for him, right? It's like when a guy's like with a woman, he feels like that he's really connected, okay? Really, when a guy is not healed, when he's in that volume deficit, he's feeling connected to himself. Like he needs her in order to feel that connection to himself. When all of those feelings and that sense of connection can be developed on one's own. And at that point, that's when her presence, like the actual woman's presence, not the anima, but the woman's presence can truly be appreciated, because at that point, you're no longer trying to hold on to her for some ulterior motive. She's not serving any kind of emotional purpose. She's there because you simply are choosing her to be there. And that's the end of it, right? Or it can get more technical, like with your program and your values and, all that stuff. Okay. But it's just as easy in that sense as well, right? Because you don't have these emotional and psychological modifiers changing what's happening between the two of you. And so this is what allows you to kind of be grounded, allows you to lead, it allows you to show up authentically, and you're not trying to kind of like position yourself, right? Like a king doesn't need to position himself. He's in his own position, and that's just the end of it, He doesn't have to move. He's just seated comfortably, like a mountain. And so, and one of my teachers, remember I was telling you about my teacher, those two teachers? Well, the one guy from Texas who was like the dude who was like preparing for World War III, he was a Japanese Buddhist. He practiced Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism and a lot of chanting and things like that. And he had a tattoo on his arm. And what was it? Something Yama, but in English it means mountain god. Oh, Kamayama. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Or Yama no Kami. But I think it just said Kamayama. And it's another way of saying it, like mountain god or god of the mountains. And, that's kind of where I've gotten the inspiration from, because he was like that. He was like this big guy. Like he's not going to move. But the funny thing is that when he did move, he was like greased lightning, but that's a whole other story. It's scary watching a 260-pound guy moving faster than you can at 185. It's wild. So moving on here, when this internal equilibrium is restored, the performance of goodness ceases. The man stops trying to earn love and approval through calculated acts and starts embodying wholeness. He becomes capable of genuine tenderness when necessary. He becomes capable of genuine tenderness and, when necessary, firm assertiveness or even a healthy display of anger. He can express true devotion without losing himself and express desire without shame. So this is what I mean, is that you become free of shackles. Like you can love as much as you want. You're never going to have the attachments that the nice guy he wants, but is also afraid of, because he knows that like pain can come from these things because he's likely experienced it before. So, but this doesn't happen. The love is just boundless, right? Like I don't have like a set limit. My bank account there's like infinity symbol in there. I can love as much as I want. It's the person who is lacking in their volume has this they ration their love, or they're watching how much they're spending because they're expecting a return. And this is not how love really is designed. right? It's a it's a boundless source of energy, right? There's not like a finite amount of electricity in the world, right? There's not a finite amount of gravity in the world or wind, right? It's the same with love. It's this boundless thing, and it just flows. It's only when you're in a position of lack when you start counting your pennies and going, oh, geez, I don't know if I could afford that. I can afford that this month. It's over my budget. And, and that's such as the case when we're always in a position of lack with anything, be it food, be it finances, be it time. When we are lacking, we watch our numbers, we watch our volume. And right. Okay. So let me continue on here. So the man stops trying to earn love and approval through calculated acts and starts embodying wholeness. He becomes capable of genuine tenderness and, when necessary, firm assertiveness and even a healthy display of anger. So the a little bit about that. Nice guys are afraid to do this. And I notice this with guys who are learning to get into power dynamics, is they'll feel bad. They'll feel guilty. They're afraid that, oh my gosh, I just gave her a command. I don't know how, I'm afraid of how she's going to react. And then their knee-jerk reaction is to smooth it over, right? Or like, oh, what I meant to say was, right? And this is their fear. They're afraid to be assertive, right? They're afraid of displaying anger. But when you've healed, you can be assertive, you can be firm, you can display healthy anger or annoyance, and there's no fear that she's going to crumble, or she's going to run away, or criticize you, or dump you, or whatever. Like, there's no fear of that, because you're not attached in that way. You're just grounded in yourself. You're seated in your throne and you're comfortable. You're not moved off of anything. So this shift leads to authentic relationships and a stronger sense of self and the ability to navigate life challenges with integrity and self-respect. Without this balance, nice guys often find themselves in codependent relationships, constantly seeking external validation and feeling a deep, unspoken dissatisfaction with their lives, despite their outward appearance of being good, or being tough, or having it together, or what have you. Like, we have this vision, this caricature of the nice guy, that he looks like a loser. He looks like Poindexter. He's got the tape on his glasses, and he's frail and so on. But no, nice guys are our soldiers. They're our Marines. They're our firefighters. They're our police officers. They're our NFL players. They're our MMA fighters. They're our teachers. They're our professors. They're our celebrities. It's everywhere. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what you see. Like, that's just how things developed. Those are due to like other factors, right? But to do these things will not cure you of self-rejection. It will not fill your cup. Like, no matter how much money you make, it's not going to make up for the fact that you have an emotional deficit with yourself. It just won't work. Which makes me think of this funny meme, that whole money won't buy you happiness, whatever, and it showed this guy doing a wheelie on a motorcycle. It said money can't buy you happiness, but motorcycles come damn close. So yeah, if you're sad, and you having a tough time healing, at least you can buy a motorcycle, and that will put plenty of smiles on your face. So let's take a look at how this high profile. What's up, man? So I find myself very comfortable, but I don't think I give any commands. I'm firm with boundaries, but I feel like I'm missing something. We don't have to give commands, right? That's just, I mean, I live in power dynamics. I live a kink lifestyle. I'm into 24/7 BDSM relationships. I'm in one right now. And so, giving commands is not foreign to me, but it's not a necessary component. But whatever your feeling is missing, just do some exploring, like do some writing. Um, and what I find is that I was actually talking about this today, that sometimes when we sit down to write, it freezes our brain, right? Because it's like kind of a pressure thing. Like, okay, we're gonna sit down and write now. Like, let's open up our brain and flow. And sometimes that can turn into a bit of a bit of stress. Okay, you're putting pressure on the situation. So what I like to do is just have the voice notes app like ready on my front screen. I have to like find it in a folder. So if I'm like driving or something, a lot of thoughts come to me when I'm driving. Same like in the shower, when you're taking a shit, like all these like kind of like situations where your mind can wander, washing dishes, what have you. And I'll just flip open that voice notes and I'll just rattle off whatever's in my head. And I find that way a little bit more successful in terms of getting thoughts out. Okay. So you may want to try that as well. But I would just say explore more of what's going on inside you. And, try not to hold judgment, stay open to anything and everything that comes to your head. Because no one's ever going to read it. So it doesn't matter what you say. Let's see here. Okay, so how does all this stuff show up in real life? Okay, so we're talking a lot about theory and concepts and psychology and all that stuff. So here's like a few things. Actually, it's a bunch of things. So bear with me about how this shows up in real life. So the number one thing here that's super common with dudes with nice guy syndrome is that he deers. And if you're unfamiliar with deering, it's an acronym and it stands for defending, explaining, excusing, and rationalizing. And this is like the bread and butter of the nice guy. And it's what happens when he can't tolerate disapproval. So instead of staying grounded and clear, he scrambles to convince the other person he's good, reasonable, or correct. So, for example, like, let's say it's coming to like a breakup, all right? And she says, I just don't feel that spark. And his reply would be like, oh, I just thought maybe if we got to know each other, or I'm sorry, like, it's like a short relationship, not a long one, And he says, oh, I thought maybe if we got to know each other better, you'd see that I'm not like other guys. Okay. So that's like defending. He's defending his position where she's saying like, I don't feel it between us. And he's defending that position. And by saying, I want you to see me like I'm not like everybody else. The irony in that is that there's far more guys that have nice guy syndrome than don't. And so him by saying, I'm not like other guys, he's more like other guys than he actually thinks he is. So that's defending. Or she's upset about something he said. And then he says, that's not what I meant. The reason I said that was because and he rambles on with like just word salad. That's explaining. Trying to explain away what he meant. Versus if you say something, you just say that. You don't lead up to it. You don't explain it on the descent. You just say the part that's important. And that's it. Or say she pulls away emotionally and he tells her, I can see you've been under a lot of stress lately. That's why you're acting that way, right? He's excusing her behavior. He's making excuses when the reality is she's lost interest in him, right? She's say this is like a new situation. She's pulling away and he comes up with all these excuses. Oh, she's so busy at work. Oh, she's really stressed out. Like it couldn't possibly be anything to do with him, right? But that's why she's acting weird. Okay. Or let's say woman sets a boundary with you and he says to himself, well, if you think about it, she's justified in treating me that way because right? And that's rationalizing. rationalizing her behavior. Or like, let's say she's rude, right? Rather than setting a boundary, she's rude to him. And he says, well, if you think about it, she's justified in treating me poorly because I did this, right? So so that's deering, right? Defending, excusing, explaining, rationalizing. Another one here is that like another example, because we're looking at like real world examples of guys expressing their nice guy syndrome. He gives gifts too early, like flowers on the first or second date, small thoughtful surprises before any true connection is earned. He's trying to buy comfort and approval rather than risking genuine attraction. And this is like one of the most common ones, especially with younger guys, right? You know, like teenagers, like they don't know what they're doing. Just like, oh, I'll just get her some flowers, right? They're not even seeing each other yet, really. It's like not even like real boyfriend, girlfriend. And he's like already giving her stuff. But grown men will do this all the time. But the big difference is they got the money to spend versus a teenager. So it's like buying her jewelry, buying her, bags, buying her dresses, buying her shoes, buying her trinkets. And, I would argue like buying her dates. This is not real, genuine connection, right? This is someone buying comfort. They're purchasing comfort, right? They're purchasing approval rather than risking a genuine connection, risking putting all of that aside and putting themselves to the test. They're not going to do that. They're too scared. Another example is that he agrees with everything. He ends up mirroring her opinions. He nods too much. He laughs at jokes that he doesn't find funny. His nervous system can't handle disapproval, so he trades authenticity for safety. And this is a really big problem in the sense that he is basically living in her mental framework. She has this way, right? She has this way of like looking at things, her opinions, what she finds funny, what she finds critical, and those sort of things. And instead of having his own or expressing his own for fear that they might oppose hers, then he just ends up flowing right into hers. And this is a bad thing. Like, obviously, this is not going to cause attraction. Okay. Like the only times that there's real attraction, there's two ways. Okay. One, when there's friction, when there's polarity. Okay. And then the other one is when there's synchronicity. And he's hoping, nice guys are hoping for synchronicity, but they will never get it because they never show up authentically. So how could they possibly synchronize with someone if they're never actually presenting their true self? So, and then of course you would never risk being polarizing and saying, you know what, I can't even see what you're saying. This is how I look at it. And, unapologetically, his nervous system can't handle it. He can't handle the stress that comes from the potential of being rejected. So he shoves all that aside, puts it in a box, tapes it up, and says, it doesn't really say it, but, unconsciously, he's like, I'll just do whatever you're doing. I'm going to agree with whatever you are, talking about. I will see the world the way you see it. Which leads me to the next one, which is withholding truth. They constantly withhold truth. They are probably the grandest liars ever. Okay. Like girls will complain about like bad boys being liars. No, the worst liars are actually nice guys. Guys with nice guy syndrome. They're the worst liars. And what makes them worse is that they're so nice outwardly. And they even would boast that they would never lie to a woman. They would never lie to her. But here's the thing. His entire architecture is a lie. And it's just plastic painted to look like steel. That's it. But it'll melt easily. It'll break easily, but it looks like it's strong, right? And that's all it's about. It's about the appearances of being good, strong, reliable, but they're anything but. And it's because they have committed the ultimate sin, which is lying to themselves, that they actually believe that they're as good as they propose themselves to be. They are drinking their own bullshit. Like tall, steaming glasses of it. And they take it as truth. So they withhold the truth of themselves. And then so that's the first sin. And then they sin to others. So when something bothers him, he swallows it. And then it leaks later through sulking, guilt trips, passive aggressive behavior, right? Like I saw this one video, granted it was a skit, right? And it showed this couple and they were in bed and it was nighttime and the guy's like, hey, and like kind of like rolls over, pulls her close to him, indicating like he would like to have sex. And she's like, not tonight, baby. I'm really tired. I'm just going to go to sleep. And he's like, and like kind of rolls over, right? Goes to sleep. And then next morning, she's like, oh, hey, honey, right? And he's like, and like walks past her, like slams a cupboard door or something like that and like huffs off into another room. And she's like, what the hell's his problem? And that's the leaking. It was a skit, so it was a little bit over dramatized, but it's a prime example of how guys withhold the truth when they have the nice guy disease. They never are forthright. They never come down and say, hey, you know what? Last night I wanted to have sex and, saw that you didn't want to. And, that annoyed me. Right. And if they really wanted to be vulnerable, they could say like, they just kind of felt like they were left out in the cold or whatever. But that's typically because they use, again, remember I said sex isn't sex to these guys? Because they use sex for connection. So no wonder they get so butthurt when she's like, yeah, I don't want something inside my body right now, like pounding my brains. I had a long day. I just would love to go to sleep. Like that to them feels like a massive rejection of self. Like you're no good, right? Because he wasn't able to get his drug supply. So now his inner drug addict is fiending, and he's pissed that he didn't get his drug. So not only is he going through withdrawal symptoms, he's pissed on top of it at his dealer. His dealer was not compliant. So it's like, fuck her, and instead of like either coming out and saying, hey, fuck you, right? And saying, you didn't give me what I wanted, or being vulnerable and saying, hey, like this is really what was going on, blah, blah, blah. They hurt my feelings, right? He can't do either of those because those are being too assertive. They're being too forthright. So instead, he's passive aggressive. He slams cupboards. He huffs about. He stonewalls. He gets real quiet. And then she comes in, right? Because that's a way of siphoning someone's energy. I mean, unless they're clever enough, it's a way of siphoning someone's energy. And what do people do in these situations? What's wrong with you? Sends over some energy. And he just eats it. And he's like, nothing. No, really? What's going on? Like, clearly you're upset. Like, or she's like, yeah, right. Like, I can totally see that you're pissed off. What is it? And he's like, no, I don't want to get into it. More siphoning of energy. I'm just going to go to the gym. Boom. Takes more energy. And it just goes round and round and round. And then two can play at that game. So now she's now hurt. And she starts doing the same thing. Or she confronts him about it, which nice guys can't handle. They can't handle direct confrontation. Not about feelings, not about the shit that they're doing. Absolutely not. And now he feels attacked. He feels like now he can play the victim card, right? So it's just this constant state of being in a victim state. All because he can't be honest. When something bothers him, he just swallows it. And it just lets it leak all over the place. So they're cowards. But really, at the root of it, what they're most cowardly about is their own emotions. They're afraid of themselves. All right, so another one here is that he avoids physical escalation. So this is not, we're not talking about angst or aggression, right? Physical escalation. So even when the chemistry is mutual, he often waits for a sign that's so blatant it never comes. He's terrified his desire will offend. And she reads that as a lack of desire and she checks out. And this is like the weird dichotomy with nice guys, because a lot of times they're the ones who are looking for the choosing signals. They're the ones who put that belief in their head. They're like, oh yeah, if I go talk to her, she's going to say I'm a creep and ruin my social credibility and call the cops and send me to jail. And next thing I know, I'm like living in Guantanamo Bay. Like that's what their fucking crazy minds go to. So, I mean, not really. I'm just playing around. But they do go the extent of like, being labeled as a creep and ruining their social cred. So, but at the same time, they're like, no, I'm not going to go talk to any girls, right? I'm just going to wait for choosing signals. But then if they were to get them, he's often convinced himself that, going back to the id, right? Those primal desires that get repressed because like being that way is, he's convinced himself, or he's been convinced that that's bad. So showing his primal desires, his sexual desires, he thinks that will be offensive. He holds back. And even if he does end up, like, say, having sex or, fooling around with this girl, he's extremely reserved. Like, he's very tender. He's very easygoing, and it's like, that's the type of thing, like if the girl sleeps with him and then the next day she's like having brunch with her friends and she's like, oh, so like, how was Mark last night? Like, oh, he was so cute, like, and she's like, oh yeah, we had sex and like, he was so sweet. He was so nice. It was like, and it's like, that's not the type of shit that like women masturbate to. Like, I'm sorry, they don't get off. Like when they're lying there playing with their pussies, they're not thinking about tenderness. Not at all. I know my kitten doesn't think about tenderness. Not at all. And I've heard a lot of fantasies from women. I've read about a lot of fantasies from women. Not once. I mean, sometimes there is some romance, but there's never tenderness. There's never sweetness. There's never being like really, really gentle. Okay. Like even the romance has some like grit or a little bit of fire behind it. Okay. Passion. Okay. There's never gentleness. There's never sweetness. There's nothing nice about it. Okay. And so that's likely what would happen with these guys, right? Because they push away their instincts. They have no good relationship with their primal self. And because they're afraid that if they let it out, it'll be judged or they'll fuck up. So they're just like, okay, I'm not gonna fuck with that. I'm just gonna let it sit there and remain in a box. And I'm just going to, pretend it's not there. So the next one is that he over communicates his emotion. I mean, nice guys, they over communicate, period. All right. And they're often the ones who like put in, I feel. They're often saying, I feel, I feel, I feel. And instead of like the conversation could be about something factual, right? They could be talking about like, car maintenance, and they're maybe getting into oil. Like there's always debates around oil. And he's like, and the guy is just habitually comes out, I feel that you should use 10W40. And it's like, what do your feelings have to do with oil? So you could say, Justin, you're being a little too stringent, right? You're nitpicking here. But I'm going to nitpick because the words we use indicate how we think. It's an indication of our framework, right? Our internal framework. And so we must pay attention to the words that we use. And as men, I would never describe I feel with anything other than feelings. Right? If you're not talking about your feelings or your emotions, you shouldn't be saying I feel. Right? It should be I think, or just saying like it is. So these guys, they over-communicate emotion. He uses vulnerability performatively, confessing every insecurity, hoping it will cause closeness. What she feels instead is a man leaning on her emotional frame. So he opens up a lot. And I know this can be really confusing to guys, because, maybe a few years ago, there was like this big push, this big wave. It was like right around the time when there was that what was it? Gillette? Those Gillette commercials where it like showed guys like policing each other, like, hey, don't go talk to that girl. And the dude like pulled him away, and he just wanted to say hi because she was cute. He's like, hey man, don't do that. You can't talk to girls. It's like, how the fuck are you supposed to meet women if you don't talk to girls? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Send her like a smoke signal. Like they did in the Old West. Hey, you're cute. What's your campfire number? So send her an eagle. Go. Take this note to her. But anyways, it was around that time period, right? A few years ago when there was this feminist push in media for men to be softer and more emotive, more sharing. And it fucking backfired. Like even like women drank that fucking Kool-Aid. And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't fucking turn women on. It might be appreciated in certain specific scenarios. Okay. But as a general thing, it's not respected. It's just not. And so then we have like a bunch of guys who are like, who've realized this, and they're like, oh shit, like women don't really care about our feelings. It's like, yeah, get with the fucking program. Nobody does. That's not why we're here. We're here to fucking survive and thrive. And that has nothing to do with how you feel. So pull up your pants, wipe your fucking nose, and get with the program. No one is here to coddle you. No one's here to make sure you're okay, right? Like whether you are feeling great or feeling awful, the world will not slow down for you. It will keep going and it will truck right along, and it will leave you in the dust as though you never existed. Eventually, it's going to leave all of us in the dust as if we never existed. Like no one will remember who I am 1,000 years from now. No one. I mean, in far less years than that. But I'm saying like everybody alive on the planet right now will be just faded into nothingness. Not even memories a year or 1,000 years from now. And so like just let go, right? That's all just fear, ego, nonsense. All right. And so, you have to like give the love, give the respect, give the acknowledgement to yourself, all of those things. And not in this overblown, like blowing yourself up sort of way. Right? At first, again, it comes from acceptance. We're stopping the rejection of self. Then you can learn to appreciate, right? But you got to stop the parts that say like, this sucks, or I don't like that, or I feel bad about that, or I'm ashamed of that, or I feel guilty of that. Like, no, you have to stop all those habitual reactions. And it can be a pain in the ass at first because you don't realize until you start looking at how fucking constant it is. Typically, it operates at like a low hum, like underneath the radar. But when you start looking, you're like, damn, that's like always there. And it's like, yeah, this is how you've been operating for 10, 20, 30 years. No wonder you've never had a relationship that's fucking worked out, right? Like even with your parents. Because you could be unhealed in this way and still be looking to your parents, giving them guilt trips, having angst with them, having judgment with them, right? Just holding on. Tomorrow you could be dead. So what the fuck are you holding on to this shit for? It doesn't serve you. So going back to the over communication, when she feels that stuff, all that flood from you, okay, when she sees the man that she's definitely not rubbing her little bean to, like when they're not masturbating to emotive men. Not at all. Sweet, emotive, kind men. They're not. Okay. But what that does is it puts pressure on her. It says, oh, because she knows women are fully aware that emotions are volatile, that it makes the possessor of such feelings volatile. Because they flow, they're unpredictable. They do whatever, up and down, like they could just go wherever. And she's well aware of this. So, and well aware that it's not a stable thing. It does not say stability. It says variability. It says flux. It says unpredictability. It says sometimes chaos. And this is something she's all too familiar with. It is her a lot of times. So she's not going to be like looking at that and going, whoopee, I'm so glad that he's acting like me. Wow, that's such a relief. No, that's going to put strain on her. I mean, maybe once in a while, like when shit's just like really fucking bad, something terrible happened, like your dog of like 20 years, like he died, he was your best fucking friend. And, you have like a deep moment of sadness and mourning and stuff like that. And she's there, right? Like that's understandable. Okay. Where for that moment, she's like, okay, I will be his container. All right. But these things should only be coming up every so often, not recurring, not as a state of being. She doesn't want to be the container. She wants to be contained. She wants to flow. She wants her waters to settle into something calm. So, you ever see a lake? You ever go camping and go to a lake and be like early in the morning? And if it's not disturbed, like certain type of like time of the year, right? Maybe like around fall time or something. It's like smooth as glass. Like it just looks like a sheet of glass. No ripples, nothing. And that's like where she wants to be. She wants to get to that state. She can't get there if you're fucking swirling around as liquid yourself. She's like, well, wait, like who's doing the containing? Like, sure, I'll like step up, like, momentarily, but I don't want to be there. I don't want to stay there. Like that's taking my spot. The fuck you doing? So she doesn't want to feel that shit. What do you got for me, Cody? In my tenderness, instead of expressing my loving and caring side, the side I want to express, I generally shut it off and turn my eyes black. Yeah. Well, probably because of what I talked about there with like the sense of a finite bank account. So when there's that sense of a finite bank account, you hold on to your pennies. And you're like, oh, no, I that's too valuable. I'm not going to let that go. Okay. But, when your cup is full with self, it's just boundless love. It just fills up. Throw out some, okay, it fills right up again. It's just endless because it all comes from me. It's not coming from another source, and then I have to watch what I spend and like I hold on to it and that sort of thing. It's just boundless. Like it's just this ever-flowing, self-regenerating thing, that I'm not looking for anything from. Like I'm not looking for like a repayment plan. I gave you 60 grams of love. I expect 60 grams of love with 5% interest. So the next one is that he self-sabotages in subtle ways. So he says yes to tasks that he resents. He overcommits or quote unquote, forgets to follow through because he can't say no directly. And that's the ego trying to escape the superego's leash through passive rebellion. And this is something I see guys do constantly. They're so deathly afraid of saying no to anyone, really, but especially the woman that's in their life, especially the woman that they have their eyes on. And once she gets the sniff of that lack of spine, she will either lose interest completely and he will either just be let go or be placed in the friend zone, or she'll abuse him. She's like, oh, wait, he can't say no. Oh, interesting. Let's see how far I can take this. Right. And they, like they'll be in bed in the morning. She's like, oh, baby, don't go. I really want you to be here. Don't go to work. Don't go to work today. Like, call in sick. He's like, oh, you can't call in sick. Like, fuck. Like, I'll get in so much trouble. I've ran out of sick days. Like, whatever. And she's like, please, 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 please. I really need you. Right. And it's like, okay, hand me my phone. Knowing that he's going to fucking catch hell the next day. Like, there's a project due or whatever. People rely on him. And like all kinds of stuff. And she's like, like he literally like put me in front of his livelihood. And basically said like, just spending time with me is more important than that. And all I had to do is bat his eyes and say, pretty please. Or bat my eyes and say, pretty please. That's, and she's like, wow, that's wild. Like, I would never do that. And here he is, just crumbling in front of me. This is where you get the stories of, oh, I'm really, it's just been a bad month and I'm like $500 short on rent. Do you think you could help me? And he's like, sure. Right. And he's like looking in his wallet. He's like, fuck, I really don't have $500 to spare, but I'm going to give her $500. He's like, well, here's $4. Right. Compromising. No spine. Never saying no. Doesn't want to comply, so he accidentally, so to speak, forgets. But he's just afraid of actually not complying. Really bad. The next one here is that he moralizes other men. Oh, man. Like they think they're so high and mighty when they're the most fucking degenerate men. They're so degenerate. So he moralizes other men. He talks down to players. He's the one who mentioned toxic masculinity. He's the one who talks about jerks and assholes. And it's a covert way to say, I'm safe, choose me. They're awful. Right? In some circles, it's called dirty macking. But women sense the competitiveness and the self-praise behind it. It's shallow. It's Like they think that they can't be seen. That's the funny part, is they think that people can't see their antics, but they can. They're just not calling them out on it. They're just like, oh, that's all right. That's Carl, you know, like good old Carl, right? But we just kind of let him be his way, because like whatever, like fuck him, you know, like he's a grown man, he can do what he wants. And the girls will either ignore him, you know, ghost him, use him, and all the while he's just like, oh man, like, and he's also going to be the first to either excuse her behavior, oh, she's just really busy or whatever, or yeah, you know, she was short on her rent and I felt bad and I've got extra money, so I just like, you know, paid her rent this month. And you know, he comes up with all kinds of excuses, or he's the first one to call her a fucking cunt because he didn't get what he needed from her. So he was the one who told her that he's like, oh man, I'm not a player. I am so different than other guys, you know, and there's not even an ounce of toxic masculinity in me. In fact, I'm a feminist. I'm not like those other jerks. And then he does the nice things. He says the nice things, takes her here, takes her there, buys her this, buys her that. And he's expecting a hug, a kiss, a blowjob, fucking something, some sort of recognition for his efforts of being so different. And he gets nothing. And sometimes these guys can flip out and just like night and day. You fucking cunt. You're such a selfish bitch. I did all this stuff and you can't even say thank you. You can't even give me a hug, right? I mean, he would never come out and be like, and you didn't even want to fuck me. Like, you know, his id really wants to say that. Right? But he can't, he has to suppress that, right? Because then that would mean he's being toxic, you know, the toxic masculine player or whatever that, you know, he says that he's not. So he has to suppress his desires. It has to be this covert thing. If I do this, I should get that. But women, they can see right through it for the most part. And the thing is that, you know, guys will say, well, then why does she bother with these guys? And the simple fact of the matter is that they can. They just can. And so some of them do. They pay the mind. Like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to just deny someone who wants to give me, you know, $1,000 just for being here. Like, why would I do that? That's stupid. Like, do you see this economy? Why would I say no to that? So they just accept it. Say like, hey, he's a grown man. He knows what he's doing. And I already told him we're not having sex. So his choices are his choices. And, you know, sometimes like there's disgust mixed with that. And for, you know, partially, I don't blame women. Like, I mean, I don't think I would do that, but I understand, at least. I don't think that they're being criminal, but that's just the way it goes. But thankfully, not every girl is like that. Usually, they just kind of lose interest, and then the guy, he misperceives this because of his fucked up perception and says that she's stringing him along. She's playing games. It's like, no, dude, she just doesn't fucking like you. Because all that stuff inside you, just, it alters your behavior. It like kind of makes you a little weird. And you think that no one can see it, but we do. It's just, it can't be hidden as well as a player, you know, because they've got basically the same problems, but they hide it with coolness. And, you know, you're trying to hide it with goodness. But it's like, nobody's good like that. Like, nobody actually operates that way. So that's why it's weird. And you think it's normal. So the next one here is that he suppresses lust until it curdles. His body still wants, right? That's the id. He still has his primal desires written into his DNA. But he disguises it in caretaking. He disguises it with back rubs, compliments, concern. And the sexual current dies, leaving her feeling mothered instead of desired. So that's the case in like relationships, but like in dating or whatever, he's the guy like, oh, like, let me give you the back rub, right? So he can like sneak in, just like touch her, and like maybe that'll move into sex. When he gives a compliment, it's not genuine. He's not really just genuinely giving somebody something, right? Because when you're genuinely giving somebody anything, you're not looking for anything in return, not even a thank you. That's not written into the into giving of stuff. You just give because you want to give, and that's it. Like, just the act of is enough of the reward, so to speak. You're not looking for a reward on top of that, because then that's not actually giving. That's trading. That's silently trading, non-verbally trading. So true giving is just a one-way street. But they don't do that. True giving of compliments, concern, gifts, time, favors, sex, like whatever it is, they're looking for something in return, because it's never giving. It's a transaction. It's a trade. These guys are so fucked up, right? And I don't say that as criticism. I'm just saying, like, if you see like this car that, you pass by a body shop and you see the car and the front end is smashed in, the back end is smashed in, like it got sandwiched between two tractor trailers, you just look at it and go like, damn, that car's fucked up. Like, there's, you're not judging the car. It's just, that's the objective fact. Like, that car's fucked up. You have to get stretched out. That frame, you got to be checked. All that body work needs to be redone. I always thought that stuff was kind of cool and considered like, getting into that kind of work. But I think it's probably a bad idea to be breathing like, micro dust of Bondo and what's that stuff? Fiberglass all day. Like, even if you have a mask, like it gets into your skin and like goes through your skin, you're breathing it out. It's got to be bad. But I always found that stuff interesting, like doing like restoration of vehicles and that stuff. But anyways, so moving on, like these patterns look polite on the surface, but they carry a single message underneath, which is, please don't leave me. Please don't lose interest. Please don't reject me. That whole mentality. When that fear runs the system, the man stops leading his life and starts auditioning for permission to exist inside someone else's. Let me read that again. When that fear runs the system, the man stops leading his life and starts auditioning for permission to exist inside someone else's. This is the mode of the nice guy, because he doesn't fully exist in his own life. He's looking for a place to move. And this can be figuratively or literally. Atarius, I find myself only wanting casual sex from women, but afraid of being honest and flirting to let her know that I'm interested in her. That just, like, you just have to do it. Like, if you're finding that there's any kind of resistance within yourself, that's a signal that you should do that thing. I mean, unless it's like morally reprehensible, so like if you see somebody who's acting up and they're being crazy and you have the desire to smack them in the face, that's something that you probably shouldn't lean into. Okay. But this sort of thing, when we feel anxiety, fear, discomfort, or what have you, just do so. Okay. Because the end result, or like the goal, I imagine for you would be, I would love to be able to communicate my desires in a smooth way that doesn't come across as offensive or, uninteresting. I think that's pretty much like how most guys would like to be. And that can't happen unless you're skinning your knees in the process. Like you got to fall off your bike while you're learning to ride it. That's just how the shit goes. And, communication is no different. The thing is, though, is that we take communication for granted because for the most part, we all can do it to like a, relative degree of, capability, right? Satisfactory level. But the thing is, though, is that it's also an art form. Like communication is an art. Like if you see how like, people who want to be like editorial writers, they want to be, they want to be orators. They want to work in television. They want to, work in the news or like anything that has to do with verbal communication. And there's so many pathways for this. They have to do a lot of training for this and learn how to creatively utilize their voice, utilize their mind. Okay. So, and understanding how their voice has an effect on things. Now you can really, like, depending on the area, I mean, like, let's say you get into like politics. That's understanding how the art can sway the perceptions and emotions of people's minds, which then alters their behaviors and their choices. And the next thing you know, because of the way you communicated, you're like, that's a president I feel I can have a beer with. I'm going to go vote for him. What the fuck does drinking a beer have anything to do with leading a country? Nothing. But the way they spoke, the way they conveyed information, and through those words, how they were able to make you feel completely altered your decision making. And you're like, I'm comfortable with that guy. Right? It's a concept in marketing called KLT, right? Know, like, and trust, or know, love, and trust. And this is what you want to build. You want to build the knowing, the loving, and the trusting. Like I'm doing this right now, just by talking with you guys, streaming, constantly like sharing about my life, sharing about my views, so that this builds the trust, so that people go, I see Mr. Justin. I can recognize him. I'm comfortable with his message. He resonates with me. I can understand what's going on with him. Sure, I'd like to buy some of his products. Like that's part of the deal, right? The difference is between me and a politician is that I'm not trying to sway you into something that I'm not actually believing in. Like if you feel like you want to have a beer with me, come to New York, we can have a beer. I doubt that's going to happen if, you think you could have a beer with your president. That's not going to work, right? Or if it does, it's going to be really rare. But yeah, anybody who wants to come to New York and hang out, like, give me a shout. That'd be cool. I've met a couple of my clients. It's a strange experience. It really is. But let me get back to this thing here. So the cure, all right? The cure starts in discomfort. Every nice guy reflex is an attempt to escape it. So healing begins when you don't try to escape yourself. So the first step is stop managing perception. Notice the moment you edit a sentence to sound softer or add context to make sure no one misreads you. Don't fix it. Just notice how reflexive you are. Awareness starts the crack on the loop. That's the first crack, is awareness of you like, oh damn, like I'm doing it again. I'm explaining myself. Oh damn, I almost just defended myself after saying what I wanted. And so that starts the cracking of those loops so that they don't loop so easily. So it's not a smooth loop. It's not like a bump, right? As it goes around, it's not super smooth. And so eventually you want to make it so unsmooth that it falls off. All right. So the next thing to practice is micro defiance. So when someone disagrees, don't rush to smooth it out. Let silence stretch. Don't fill the silence. You'll feel the old panic rise. And that's the ghost of the boy who learned approval equals safety. Stay with him. breathe through it. Okay. You're going to want to manage your knee-jerk reaction to manage, right? So you're going to manage the manager who's always done a poor job of managing. He has no idea what he was doing. So you're going to have to manage him, okay? So when he wants to quickly step up to make a correction, to defend, to excuse, to explain, or to rationalize, like just grab his hand, say, sit down, just relax. It's going to be fine. Just let what you just said linger. Let it sit there. And just watch what she does. It's not going to be the end of the world, even if she gets upset. Just relax. But you have to do this over and over and over to train him to stay seated. And then after a while, you can just evict him. Say, well, you've just been sitting around here for the past 5 months. You basically just are a bump on a log and take up space. You're going to have to take your bag and go home. And it's not here. And you evict them. But, you got to start, recognizing when you do these things and then build an awareness off of it. And then when you have the knee-jerk reaction to correct things so that nobody misunderstands you, then you just allow yourself to breathe through that tension. On the flip side, you can learn assertive communication by being very direct and very clear with your words, okay? So like I had a guy where he was having a thing with his woman and he was like, I didn't like your vibe yesterday. It's like, what the fuck does vibe mean? Like, that's not how men talk. It's specific to the behavior. When you went over here, you grabbed that thing and you said this. I didn't like the way you said that. It came off as whatever, right? And just being very clear, very objective. You're not getting your feelings wrapped up in the shit. It pissed me off or made me so sad or I found that offensive. Like, no. It's like, just this wasn't right. Okay? It's coming from like a moral position of right and wrong. Not how it made you feel. Okay? So, but in order to condition yourself to speak clearly, right, so that you don't have the misunderstandings and you don't have to produce more words to prevent misunderstandings, you have to be okay with tension until it becomes no big deal. And so another one is to reclaim your anger and desire. So this doesn't mean to lash out, but to feel again, right? Journal, train, fight, fuck, scream into a steering wheel if you must. The goal isn't chaos. It's contact. And those drives aren't the enemy. So see, like, that's what the nice guy has conditioned himself to believe, that his primal desires, his primal needs are an enemy to him. And they're not the enemy. They're the raw data of aliveness. All right. But you don't want to lash out. You don't want to be chaotic. Okay. It's like having a very well-trained beast of a dog, right? Where they could be on leash, they could be off leash or whatever, and they're right there with you. They're really obedient. They sit, they're composed, right? But if you give that fucking special word in Japanese or whatever, it like snaps awake and boom, it's like this, terror. And that's the type of behavior you want to have, in terms of like control and obedience. Like, have you seen like those dogs where they can sit and they put like a little, sausage on their nose and they just sit there until you say, okay, take it. And they like kind of flip it into the air and snap it and it's gone. Like, that's the sort of obedience you want when it comes to your anger. The dog's still alive. You know what I'm saying? It's still very much able to act and be a dog. Okay. It's just not diving into the food bag, right? It's not lashing out and trying to bite everyone who passes by, okay, thinking that everything's a threat. It can, but it's under control now, right? It's been trained. It's now obedient. And so this has to do with your desire to fight, your desire to fuck, your desire to scream, right? Your desire to lash out. Like this is like cultivating it, right? We don't want to shut it down. We want to like refine it so that you can speak on your anger without being in your anger, right? You can feel it, but it's not controlling your behavior. It's not causing you to shout. It's not causing you to like punch walls or anything like that. It's just composed, refined. And I can tell you, that is more intimidating than someone who's like flailing about. Like, think about it. Like, I'm trying to think of a movie character who is just like off their rocker with violence, right? And they're like, I'm going to fucking kill you, like going crazy. And then there's Hannibal Lecter. Like, I would be much more concerned if Hannibal Lecter said, I'm going to fucking kill you. Or in his like calm, like incisive little voice, I'm going to fucking kill you, and you're like, fuck, you said that like you were just eating cereal on a Saturday morning, like it's just something on your to-do list, like I'm freaking out, like whatever, it's like easier to deal with him. But that refinedness, that's just like, it's there, but it's not ruling over things. That is so much more potent, right? And like, so imagine like the desire to fuck. Like this is, one of my like my past girlfriends, like I express in this way, and it was, we were, I forget, it was her place or something, and I said, listen, well, shit, what the fuck did I say? God damn, it was right on the tip of my tongue and it just slipped out of my brain. But, all right, whatever. Something about fucking, right? Like, you're going to get fucked, right? But it wasn't like I wanted to, right? It was that sex had to happen to make a point, not because I couldn't contain myself, right? It wasn't anything like that. But that's the thing. Like, you want even your sexuality to be like that obedient beast that's on a leash. And then when you give it the go ahead, it's able to express itself and be its beastly self. But if it doesn't have that go ahead, nope, it just stays calm, poised, and ready for command. And so it's like, if you can do that with yourself, imagine the power that could be achieved with a woman, where she is now poised in the same way. She's ready to act, ready to express at your command, right? So for some people, that sounds really, really interesting. Like, I really like the idea of, a high protocol slave in like the BDSM context. I think that's super sexy. Something that's really refined. I don't know. That's just my thing. I was talking with another guy, who's also dominant. He's not into that at all. He loves the wild and fucking craziness of a brat. He's like, I love brat taming. I'm like, oh, like I don't have the fucking patience for that anymore. Probably due to my age, right? I'm more of like a, get off my lawn sort of age. Chasing whippersnappers off my lawn with a stick or a baseball bat. Yeah, I don't have patience for that shit. So reclaiming, but not letting things get out of hand. Next one is to, like, part of the healing is to shrink the superego's sermon. So watch your inner moralist, right? Every time it says you shouldn't, right? You shouldn't think that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't do that. Ask, says who? That question alone reestablishes sovereignty. Okay. Now, the only time that this makes sense, all right, is if it's reflected in your CPRs. And my students know what that is. Okay. So this is your constitution that we design at the academy. And if it's going against your CPRs and you're, because that's not really your super ego speaking. That's your system that you designed to govern your own behavior that you're aware of, and saying, oh, hey, you know what? That does not jive with our constitution. Okay. So that's a little bit different. And the only exception. But when your super ego is stepping in and trying to moralize your behavior, and oftentimes it comes along with guilt and shame. Okay. So that's why I was getting at looking at one's guilt and shame and learning to accept these things instead of pushing them away, because what that does is it takes the power out of the super ego to judge and moralize you. All right. And to a certain degree, depending on what it is, that's okay. It kind of keeps us in line. Okay. It prevents us from slapping the person at the DMV line. So there's usefulness to it. Okay. But when it comes to moralizing and judging your own personal choices, your behaviors, things that you want, things you want to do, it's not helpful, right? It's actually poisoning you. So, you want to thin that out. You want to thin out the power that the superego has. And, when you question its authority, that's when you start establishing your own sovereignty. And this is, goes right hand in hand with the whole notion of keeping your cup full. That's being sovereign emotionally. So sovereignty is the dream. It's the ideal position to be sovereign on so many levels. Now, we may not get there ever. I don't know if I'm ever going to be sovereign financially, where I don't ever have to do anything to generate money, right? So that's something I have to accept. But I suppose I don't mind that, because I enjoy my work. I enjoy helping people. Okay. I think I'd probably do this even if I wasn't making money for it. It's just something I enjoy doing. So you just understand, you're not going to be sovereign everywhere. Okay. But there should be things that you are working towards sovereignty, where you're not ruled by other things. And the most potent forms of sovereignty are the interior ones. It's where, the mechanisms at work, they are not governing how you show up to yourself, how you show up to other people, how you show up to your woman, how you show up to your family. Okay. People that matter. Okay. It's when you remove yourself from those governors, removing a governor on a car so it can rev higher. This is what you need to do for yourself, essentially. So another healing practice that goes in line with this is building small boundaries. Okay, so learning to say no to trivial things first. When the woman says, hey, can you, do this or that, right? Can you take out the trash right now? No. Right? Is that trivial? Yes, it is. It's the trash. So don't say no because, no, I'm doing this, or when I get around to word salad. Defend. Right? Rationalize. You're just saying no. I mean, unless she comes back and says, well, why can't you? Well, then you can, include a brief explanation, because she asked you a direct question. But if she says, can you take out the trash right now? You have to test out these trivial things, and by saying no. You're going on a date. Try it. That person is not even your girl. She doesn't even matter, really. Say no. I want to go dancing. No. Why not? Because I don't want to. And who cares if she gets upset? Oh my gosh, she blew the date. So? If you said yes, you'd be blowing the date with yourself. And that date lasts for your whole life. So what's more important? I mean, but it's hard for guys who are addicted for the drug of validation that they get from girls because they don't really like themselves. So say no to trivial things, decline invitations, don't over-explain, let people be mildly disappointed. Allow them to. Each no trains your nervous system that rejection isn't death. It's not the end of things. And it's really the beginning of a great relationship with yourself, trusting yourself. And also training yourself to be okay with other people's emotions doing what emotions do. Like I said this to one of my clients, and it kind of set him back. And I said, did you know that you're not responsible for your woman's feelings? And he was like, what? It didn't compute for him at first because he'd always taken on her feelings. Now, granted, it was never put, in writing or made forthright where he says, someone says, I hereby decree that you're responsible for my emotions. It wasn't anything like that, but it was just this assumed mechanism. And this is what, happens when you have the conditioning of this sort of paradigm all throughout your childhood. You learn this paradigm and then you just exercise it as you get older. And it never changes because you never have the awareness to change it, right? Remember, going back to the very beginning, all of this begins with awareness and not shying away or deflecting or ignoring what you see. And so one of the benefits of coming out of this is understanding that if someone wants to be disappointed in you, they can. They have that right. If they want to be angry with you, they can. They have that right. You have no right to even want them to feel something different. It's just not your place. Just like they don't have that over you. Nobody does. So, and lastly, as part of the healing process, is that you want to redefine goodness. So the old script of be nice to be loved, that's basically the MO of nice guys. Replace with be real to be known. Real men can be kind without neutering themselves. Kindness with teeth is presence. Kindness without teeth is camouflage. So it's like that old adage, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Kindness with teeth actually makes the kindness valuable because it says, I could destroy everyone in this fucking room, but I'm going to do this instead. I could because I'm, inspired to, I'm really pissed off or whatever. And I'm just stopping myself. It's not like that. It's saying I have the capability, I have the capacity to do this, but I'm going to be kind. Right. And that makes the kindness that much more potent, even if nobody knows that this is what's going on within you. Okay. It just changes the texture of your kindness versus someone who's, doing it for approval. They are, it hits differently. We've all experienced false kindness. I can't stand it. Especially, I hate the one where you bump into somebody you haven't seen in a while. And you're like, oh, hey, you chit chat for a couple minutes. And then someone says, we should get together sometime. And yeah, we should. Cool, man. All right, I'm going to continue my walk. Be in touch. That's all fake. It's all fake. It'd be so much more honest. Just be like, hey, man, it's really good to see you. Right. And that's it. You don't fill in with bullshit and saying, hey, we should get together. Right. Like, it was just really good to see you on this walk. I totally did not expect that. How have you been? Right? Like, catch up right there. And then you just leave it at that and say, hey, man, it was awesome seeing you for a second here. You know, I got to get going. Take care of yourself. Like, that's more real than, oh, we should get lunch sometime. So like between now and like the end of my life, we should get together and have lunch. That's where sometime lives. So be real to be known. Don't seek love. Don't seek to be loved. Seek to be known. When people know you, that's when you give them the opportunity to respect you. And if they want to love you, sure, let them. But, you know, that's not your choice. It's not your choice whether somebody loves you or not. If they love you, great. If they don't, okay. Like, that's them. They don't have to. So know that the deeper path, right, which is acknowledging, examining, and dismantling the nice guy system, isn't about becoming tougher and more resilient, right? It's about becoming whole. Once the split between your instincts and your morals heal, women stop feeling you as safe and they start feeling you as someone who's actually alive. Right? Because you don't have all of this fake shit coming off of you as a result. And you think like women can't see it. And if they can't see it, they definitely feel it. They can feel it intuitively. They're like, this isn't a man. Like, this is something else. And I don't really know what exactly that is, but it, like, he's not the dude. He's not the guy. Too expensive in New York for me. Yeah, fuck yeah, this place is expensive. It's like $2,000 for a month for like a closet, like a walk-in closet, and that's like your room. A room. What's up, Dylan? Good to see you, man. So we've been conditioned to think that the onus is on us to make a woman feel comfortable. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Because unfortunately, like, they have their own conditioning, which says men are dangerous, men aren't to be trusted, you know, and for good reason. So you do have the onus is to, at the very least, not make them uncomfortable. I mean, until your game has increased, right? Because then you learn discomfort actually increases arousal. Comfort does not, right? But that's another useful emotion. Like, comfort is, you know, like, women desperately want to feel comfortable, right? That's part of feeling safe. I don't know if there's an uncomfortable version of safe, but this is what they want to feel. They want to feel safe. And once they're comfortable, that's when they open. That's when they become connected. That's when they're vulnerable. That's when they want to become more liquid and pour into you. Okay. But we don't necessarily have to make them comfortable. What you can do is invite them into the state of safety. Invite them into comfort. And if they don't want to come with you into that state, like, they don't have to, right? They're entitled to feel however they want to feel. And that should have no bearing on you. That should have no bearing on how you feel, what you do, or what have you, right? Because everybody's entitled to have their own experience. And if it just so happens that they're, you know, feeling a certain way for whatever reason, it could be whatever they're carrying inside them. It could be something that you've done or said, or a combination of the two. That whatever it is, that's what it is. And you just accept it. right? Acceptance and letting go has way more power than you think it does. So much more power. Ah, okay. Interesting. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we're here at the top of the hour at midnight. I'm not going to stay up too much later, so I'm going to pull this one to a close. So I hope that this was informative. I hope it kind of checked out nice guy syndrome from a different angle so that you could understand it better and perhaps understand yourself a little bit better, even if you don't have nice guy syndrome, right? It's the id, the ego, super ego, the anima, and the animus. They're all very interesting stuff that goes far deeper than what I just kind of scraped upon. It's yeah, it's interesting stuff. So check it out. So that'll be that. Thank you for sitting with me this evening. And thank you for those who are going to catch me on the replay. Until next time, take it easy.